Hello YouTubers, Alaska Prepper here. With Lynn's permission, I am posting the interview I had with her on the Homestead Oz YouTube channel. I enjoyed myself so much, ladies and gentlemen, that I wanted to give Homestead Oz the recognition it deserves. If you enjoyed this video, please consider stopping by the Homestead Oz YouTube channel and show your support by subscribing and becoming part of a great community. I will provide a direct link to the channel on a pinned comment. Enjoy the video and many blessings to all of you and your families.
The broadcast is live.
The broadcast is live. So, Rudy, everyone, we've got Alaska Preppy here, a good friend of mine. Well, I consider him a good friend of mine, even though we haven't talked that much. Really, we've emailed a couple of times, haven't we, Rudy?
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I consider anyone that I've watched for 3 years a good friend of mine. If I've stuck watching someone for that long, yeah. So that's it. So, Rudy, it's great to have you on Homestead Oz, and Wayne and I, as I say, have watched you for a long time. But I wanted to bring you on today because I have got quite a few questions that I thought us Aussies might want to be interested in knowing from you. There's plenty, you've got plenty of videos out there. By the way, how many videos have you got out there? Do you know, or is it too many?
I think I just went over 1,000 one or two videos ago, something like that.
Oh, wow. Great. Yeah. So, and you've got all your playlists and everything, so people can go check out your channel, and you've got everything from canning to, I saw today you put out one on solar power.
Yeah, solar generators, yes.
Yeah, even growing inside, you do gardening inside, which I really enjoyed.
Yes.
And
well,
so there's,
when I started doing videos, for prepping, what I decided to do was show people what I do. So whenever you see me do a video, it's not because I'm doing it because I feel like I need to put up a video. It's because I was going to do it anyways.
Yeah.
So if you see that I don't do like a pressure canning video for a long time, it's because I haven't needed to pressure can.
That's right.
So if I'm going to do something anyways, I ask myself, is this something that someone else can benefit from? And if it is, I'll do a video on it and share with the public. And I also do, as you know, some like news and economic type videos. Yeah, and the reason I do those is because it is of great interest to me. I'm probably the most boring person you'll know. And on my free time, I like to study financial systems and economic systems throughout the world and our country. So I find that a lot of that knowledge that is really needed is not readily available for the average person to understand. So whenever I do a video like reading an article about the economy or about financials, I try to break it down to where the average person like me can understand it and not have to get frustrated and stop reading it and then not learn about the economy and the financial system by which we're governed and live in. So that's my goal, is to get information to people that want it. Yes. That's my goal. Yes.
Yeah. Well, on that topic, we were talking and you mentioned how you got into prepping. And I'd like you to share that story with our friends out there in YouTube land. And you did mention a book that did get you into prepping, and you told me a great story about it. Would you mind sharing that now, Rudy?
No, absolutely, absolutely. So when I used to be in the Army, I'm retired from the United States Army. And during my first deployment to Afghanistan, about halfway through or so, I was on my way back to the States to go on what they call R&R, which is kind of like vacation. Excuse me. And before I got on the plane, one of my buddies gave me a book, and he said, "Here, read this." And I really don't like to read. However, I knew that I had about a 36-hour trip in front of me. So I'm like, all right, I might as well. So I read that book.
You're in a cargo plane, too.
Yeah. My first leg of that trip was in the back of a cargo plane. But which when you're downrange, or when you're in Afghanistan for 6 or 7 months, and then you get a chance to come home for a couple of weeks, you don't care how you get there, right? So you'll take anything. The name of the book that he gave me to read is Confessions of an Economic Hitman by an author named John Perkins. And that book is still available on Amazon, and I recommend it highly. And what that book did for me is that it helped to wake me up as of the way of the governments, what governments do that the citizens don't know about.
No.
So John Perkins used to work for the government, and I'm not going to give it away. That way, you know, people can read it because it is an outstanding book, and it's not that long. It's a short book, probably about that thick. So it's not that long, and once you start reading it, you won't want to put it down. It's a great book. So that woke me up to how the government does things behind the backs of the average citizen that they are representing, without the citizenry knowing what they're doing. And a lot of those things are very bad things, right? Which I won't get into, right? So that woke me up to the fact that the government that I thought that I was serving probably wasn't really the government that I thought that I was serving. That it was, you know, that I had on, here we call it that we can see through rose-colored glasses. Because that way, when you see everything great. But really in the background, it's really not that great, the way that the world runs. So that got me to exploring other things. And it led me to read a book called The Creature from Jekyll Island by G. Edward Griffith, which I highly recommend. I would say that if I had to pick one book or the other, I would recommend The Creature from Jekyll Island more than Confessions of an Economic Hitman, because The Creature from Jekyll Island explains to the reader the evolution of the Federal Reserve Bank of the United States.
Well, that's very, very important for people to know that, how the Reserve Bank started. Then everything clicks into place, doesn't it?
Yes. Then you start seeing, once you read those two books, you'll start seeing life in a different way. And there have been many days that I've told myself, I wish that I would have never woken up. I wish that I was still as ignorant as I was 20 years ago, because I would just be living life nice and happy, not knowing what's going on, not knowing what's coming ahead, you know. So reading those two books led me down the rabbit hole, as you would say, you know, and I started researching more and more and more. And I came to a point where I told myself, you know what, I think it was Hurricane Sandy that hit the East Coast. And during that hurricane, I remember seeing a news clip of a lady in the streets that was running up to a senator, Senator Schumer, I believe is his name, right? And she was running up to him saying, please, please help us. Are you from the government? We need gasoline. We need food. We need blankets. We don't have heat. We are going to freeze if we don't get help. After watching that, I told myself, you know what? The government is not there to help us. They are not there to help us. And in my opinion, and no, not even in my opinion, this is fact. For people that think that the government was instituted to help you, you're wrong. The government is supposed to be in place, at least in the United States, okay? The government is supposed to be in place in order to protect your liberties. That's what they're supposed to be there for, to protect your God-given liberties, right?
Well, you have a constitution, whereas we don't have a constitution, basically, right? Yeah. And the thing is, before we go any further, in case this is censored, well, Rudy is stating the facts for the United States, and for those in Australia, well, we can take on board what we like. This is just an interview, and we'll keep going on further. Sorry, Rudy, to interrupt.
Yes, everything I'm speaking about here is in reference to the country I live in, the United States of America. So anyways, I told myself, you know what? The government is not there to protect, to help you. It's, if you want to be free, you have to be willing to take on the responsibilities that come with freedom. And that's taking care of yourself. So when I came to that realization that I'm the one that I'm supposed to look to when hard times come, I look to my family, because I have a wife and I have 2 children. And I asked myself, what would happen if we were in the same condition or situation that that lady was after that hurricane, who didn't even have a can of gasoline put away to power her generator? And I asked myself, what kind of a man would I be if I could not ensure that my family was safe? Right? So you know, after that, I went down the path of preparedness. I started doing everything that I needed to do in order to be better prepared for anything, not just for any one thing. A lot of people will see a prepper and they'll remember that name, that movie or series, Doomsday Preppers.
Yes, yes.
So a lot of people, when they hear the word prepper, they automatically go back to Doomsday Preppers and say, "Oh, preppers are just crazy."
Yeah, that's right.
And however, I believe that that series, Doomsday Preppers, did a lot of injustice to the name prepper, because if you would notice, if you go back right now, it's still up on YouTube. I think you can watch it. But if you go and watch that series, you will notice that no matter what anyone was prepping for, whether it be a financial collapse, whether it would be a Yellowstone volcano, whether it would be Cascadia, you know, breaking in half, anything that they were prepping for, towards the end of the video, the narrator always came in and said, even though John Doe is prepping for an economic collapse, the likelihood of an economic collapse happening is very, very slim to none. So pretty much every single one that they had on that show, they negated the reason why they were prepping, pretty much telling the public, you don't really need to prep because this is never going to happen. So that show did a lot of injustice. Yeah, it did a lot of injustice to the word prepper. And they also liked to pick some people that were kind of iffy. You know, like I remember seeing a gentleman on there that said that he was a prepper, and the way he was prepping was by collecting self-defense tools to go and take food from other people.
Yes, I remember that one. Yeah.
So like I said, they did a great injustice to that. But one of my goals is to normalize the word prepping for the average person. That way, when they hear that word, they know that it's not prepping for the end of the world. It's not prepping for anything significant, but for everything. So everyone in life needs certain things to live. And I like to call it the 3 B's of prepping. I have it broken down into the 5 B's of prepping, but the first 3 are the most important. And I'll go over them really quick, just in case we have any viewers that are not prepping or are new to prepping. So the first B is beans, and beans stands for food and biologicals. Oops, sorry.
That's all right.
I keep losing the slide here. So beans stands for food and biologicals, and the reason I like to add biologicals to it is because we are biological beings. What do we need in order to survive? What are the primary things that we need to survive? Well, first we need water, we need shelter, we need food, right? We need those things in order to survive. And then the second B of prepping would be Band-Aids. And what does Band-Aids stand for? It stands for medical. Do you take prescription medication? You know, if you take prescription medication, it may be nice to have an extra month or 2 or 3 months supply of medication, just in case something happens where you can't get to it. Just in case the pharmacy's closed and you can't get your medication, you have a supply that will get you through that rough spot, right? And then in addition to that, you know, you can throw in all of your other medical things like over-the-counter medications that you may need for certain times of the year, etc., right? And then the third B of prepping, I call bullets, and that stands for self-defense, right?
Exactly.
And the reason self-defense is so important is because why would you want to prepare all of those extra things to help you survive and help your family survive if you're going to allow the toughest thug on the block to come and take it?
That's right.
And here in the United States, in YouTube world, in the United States, we like to call them boomsticks, right?
Yeah, that you do. I've noticed.
So a boomstick, to me, is a great equalizer. And what I mean by that is that a 125-pound woman is just as powerful as a 350-pound man, as long as she is equipped with the proper self-defense tool.
And a good shoulder.
Yes. Whichever kind you are most proficient with and comfortable with is the kind that you should have as far as self-defense goes. So those are the three first B's of prepping. I added 2 more, and the fourth one that I added, and the last 2 that I added really are not very necessary, but they're nice to have. So the fourth one that I added was bullion. And what I mean by bullion is like gold and silver.
Oh, yes.
It's like gold and silver, and what that stands for is wealth preservation, because if you want to prepare for a crisis, there's always a beginning and an end to a crisis. So although gold and silver or any kind of wealth preservation mechanism that you prefer, although those things may not be very usable in the middle of a crisis, it's always nice to have them in order to preserve some wealth to get you to the next step, to get you over the hump, right? Yes, so that you can have something to start over. All right, so that's the fourth one. And then the fifth one I like to call barter. The fifth B is barter. Have extra things of everything that you already have, and maybe some things that you don't use that you know are very barterable. For example, I don't really drink spirits. I don't really drink alcohol, but I have alcohol. I have some alcohol. You know, I don't have 1,000 bottles, but I probably have about 15, 20 bottles of alcohol that if it came to it, I can actually barter that, you know, and get something that maybe I forgot to prepare that someone else may have. So I put barter in as the fifth B of prepping. So if you follow those 5 Bs of prepping, or at a minimum, the first 3 Bs of prepping, and then you decide what kind of a time frame or period of time you want to prepare for, then you have a starting point as to what you need to do to get what you need to get to be prepared for either 1 month or 3 months or 6 months or a year or however long you want. I like to recommend, I used to recommend for people to be prepared for like 3 months. And now seeing the days that we are living in, I recommend that people prepare for a minimum of 1 year.
I agree.
And and some people, when you tell them that, and it's not their fault, because if you're not educated in something, then your ignorance is not your fault. However, if you're not willing to learn, then your ignorance is your fault. So as long as you're willing to learn, it's okay to be ignorant, but try to learn those things that you don't know about. And when people hear that, oh my goodness, a year's worth of food, that's so much food, where am I going to put that? Well, I don't know. I'm pretty sure that you've probably seen my pantry video.
Yeah, I've seen many of your pantry videos. Yeah.
And if you look at my pantry video, that room is only about 8 feet wide by 9 feet long.
I remember you saying that.
Yeah, that's about 72 square feet. So that's smaller than the size of an average room in the United States. So in that one room, and that's 72 square feet, there are enough calories in there to feed my family of 4 for a year. So when people say that they don't have room to do it, they're really either making an excuse, or they just either don't know that they actually do have room, but they just don't know how to use that room to benefit them so that they can be prepared with the things that they need. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you what, and I know that I'm really going on here, but I just want to tell you, I just want to tell whoever is watching that, ladies and gentlemen, trust me, it doesn't matter what country you live in. Your government is not going to take care of you. When things get really tough, you are going to be on your own. I really hope that you understand that. I'm not saying this as a government hater. I don't have a political party. I am apolitical, meaning that I don't label myself with a political party, because I feel that the system by which we live here in the United States is a one political party system, meaning that they're in it for themselves and not the people. You know, and just a caveat on that is, you take a look at any politician right now in the United States. How many of those politicians in the last year that we've had this health crisis, how many of them have lost their homes? How many of them have lost their jobs? How many of them have lost their pay? How many of them have had to go to a food bank to get food and wait in line for 6 hours to get food? Not one of them, ladies and gentlemen. So ask yourselves, after me telling you that, ask yourselves, is the government really there to help you? No, they're not. So it is up to you to decide to take care of yourself and your families for when times are really tough. Because tough times are coming, ladies and gentlemen. Another little hobby that I have is I like to study cycles.
Yeah.
So remember now, I'm the most boring person you know, okay? So another hobby that I have is that I like to study cycles. And what I believe through studying cycles, what I believe that we're going towards in the next 4 to 5, maybe 10 years is the culmination of many cycles together. For example, the major war cycle is a 100-year cycle. When was the last major war, right? So we're getting closer. We're getting closer to that point.
Yeah.
The business cycle, there's a macro and a micro business cycle. The micro business cycle is every 8 to 10 years. The macro business cycle is every 80 to 100 years. Well, what year did the Great Depression start in? Around what year? Around 1928, 1929, right? We're getting close to that, aren't we? To that 100 years. So that's another cycle. Another cycle is a climactic cycle. And for people that haven't heard about the grand solar minimum, it is a cycle that lasts anywhere between 400 to 450 years that has to do with the sun. And a grand solar minimum is not a good thing. All right. So we are encroaching onto that cycle as well. So all of these cycles are going to come together around the same time, meaning that the things that we have to prepare for are multifaceted and not just one thing. But the good news is this. The good news is that everyone needs to eat. Everyone needs to drink. Everyone needs shelter. And those things are easy to get right now. They may be a little more expensive. And I feel that they're going to continue to get more expensive with all of the fiat, with all of the fiat currency that governments all around the world are printing out of nothing. And that's another video on the fiat currency. That's probably another video because, it would take a while to explain that. But later on, if you wanted me to take 2 minutes to explain that, I can, because I love talking about economics. So
well, we can do that maybe another day, Rudy, maybe.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We could do that. We could do that. So ladies and gentlemen, what it comes down to is this. Make sure that you get your 3 B's of prepping and do your best to get as much as you can that'll take you out as far as you can. Because in the next coming year or 2, maybe 3, who knows? And some people would say, well, it's not going to start happening for another 3 or 4 years. And I'm like, that's great. If that's true, that's great. It gives us more time to prepare. So as a preparedness-minded person, I don't wish for there to be torment. I don't wish for these things to happen.
None of us do. None of us do.
But we want to make sure that we're prepared in case they do happen.
Yes.
And that's what counts. I honestly wish that my family and I would never, ever have to need our preps. I wish that we would never need them, because that means that life is good. However, however, I'm not sure how it works in Australia, but in the United States of America, they have something called insurance for your vehicle.
Yes,
you get insurance for your vehicle before you get in an accident, right? Not after.
Not after, no.
Right? Yeah. So if you get insurance for your vehicle in case you get into an accident, why wouldn't you have food insurance in case you can't get food?
Exactly.
So I'll go ahead and let you talk for a little bit, Lynn.
Look, I think that's wonderful, Rudy, what you've said. I mean, you've said it. You put it in a chocolate box. It's been the best chocolates I've had for a long while, that little conversation there. One thing I will say about when you were saying about the Depression starting in 1929, it was a roaring 20s before that time. And this is what we've seen. We've had the roaring 20s, and people don't realise it. You and I have discussed it before, that we said, people will never know what the Great Depression was like, truly, I don't think, because we've got technology.
They will know what it was like. Here in the next few years, they'll know what it was like.
Well, sorry, what I should say is, with the communications we have now, that's what I should say. Back then they didn't have that. It was like they had read the local newspaper, and I remember Al Capone. Do you remember ever seeing that picture of Al Capone? Had soup kitchens everywhere.
Yeah.
He was. Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know whether that would be allowed nowadays, that we could have a criminal run soup kitchens for the people that you know, haven't got jobs or whatever, but I know you do a lot of that.
Well, the state government runs soup kitchens, so so what's the difference?
yeah, that's right. That was good. Yeah, but no, really, you keep going. You've actually, I have got some questions written here, and most of them you've nearly answered.
By all means, yes.
Yeah, I was really intrigued of how you did start prepping, because a lot of people do it out of a reaction. You didn't do it out of a reaction to a pandemic or whatever. You had a thought process that happened, and that was the same with me. So both you and I had a thought process. We got that gut feeling. We could see that things weren't sustainable. Now, that word sustainable can mean a lot of things nowadays, but for you and me, I think it means across the board that things in the whole global system aren't sustainable. So I feel that a lot of people now that are starting prepping, what would your advice be to them, since they've been more reactionary rather than you and I?
Oh, that's a great question. You've probably heard me say it 1,000 times. I say that slow and steady wins the race.
Yes.
So, you know, when you're in the military, and I'm not saying that people that haven't been in the military are like this, but when you're in the military, you're taught to think about what you're going to do before you do it. And you're also taught to think about secondary and tertiary effects. Meaning, if I do this because I want this outcome, what if this outcome happens? Then what do I do? Or what if that outcome happens? Then what do I do? So you're taught to like have a plan for several different scenarios. So what I tell people is start with the basics. I've always said that everyone needs to drink and eat, right?
Yes.
Start with the basics. Go into your pantry, take a look at what you have, and take a look at what you use in a month. And then just write it on a piece of paper. And you know, I love to use corn as my example. Yeah. So, for example, if my family eats 4 cans of corn in a month, then I know that if I want to be prepared for a year, I need 48 cans of corn, because 12 times 4 is 48. So you use that ideology or that concept with everything that you use, even toothpaste, even toothbrushes and floss, socks, everything that you use that is a consumable item that you will eventually have to replace. You do that with everything. And then you start on your list. And you don't have to go out there and buy a year's worth of food in one day. If you can afford it, great. If you can afford it, do it. That's awesome, you know, great. But what you do is every time that you go to the, do you call it supermarket in Australia?
Yes, we do,
Okay, so every time that you go to the supermarket, you pick up an extra 2 cans of corn until you've got your 48. And then you pick up your extra 2 cans of beans or whatever until you've got your 48. And then you'll notice that just by picking up a few extra items every time that you go shopping, you'll notice how quickly that builds up to a very nice stockpile. All right. And then all you have to do is get the things that you consume. Don't get anything fancy. Get the things that you consume until you have a 1-year supply of sustenance. Then once you have that 1-year supply of sustenance, we'll do that on another video. But my main concern is to get people who are not preparing to at least start working towards achieving a 1-year supply of sustenance, because everybody needs to eat. Without food, you cannot do anything. You know, and when I say get everything you consume, even if you consume a candy bar, put it on your list. Because if you ever need to rely on that food, it's because something bad has probably happened. And if something bad has probably happened, having a comfort food is usually a very good stress reliever. So during hard times, you want to be able to maintain as much normalcy as you can. And having that extra food not only allows you to maintain normalcy for your family, but it also allows you to maintain your sovereignty or the control over your actions.
Exactly right.
And the reason I say that is this. If you have preps put away and something occurs where you can't get food for a month or 2 months, however long, and you have prep put away, then you don't have to beg for food, right? You don't have to go and let's say you go to a food bank and they to get food. You're going to have to adhere to what they want you to do for that food.
Exactly.
And if you don't have any food put away, you are at the mercy of whatever person has that food.
Exactly
so
right.
By having some preps put away, by having some extra food put away, you are therefore allowing yourself to keep control over your own actions during times of crisis.
Yeah. You're independent.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're independent. Exactly right. So getting onto that food topic, in Alaska, what food shortages do you have at the moment? Have you? I realised last year you did have, but have they come back, the food? You have a different system too, being Alaska.
Well, not everything has come back full force. I can tell you that from my personal experience, the shelves look great. However, you can tell that there are some foods that haven't made it back, and you can tell that some foods have really gone up in price. Yes. So, for example, beans, dry beans, they're not as plentiful as they used to be. Now, when you go to the supermarket, you'll notice that the beans section is a lot thinner and shorter, whereas before it used to be this wide. Now it's only 2 shelves wide, and there's not as much in there. So there's a lot of things like, for example, rice. Rice has gone up in price about 30% here just in the last few months. I was flabbergasted when I went to Costco and realized that a 50-pound bag of rice a year ago was about $19 for a 50-pound bag of rice, which is roughly about, that's roughly about what, 25 kilos? I think that's how you do it.
Something it would like be. That's cheap. That's compared.
Well, here, that it used to be $19 for a 50-pound bag of rice. Now it's $27. So it's gone up by almost 40% in 1 year.
Exactly.
And I see it going up higher and higher and higher. And there's also some things. There's also some things like canned beef. Canned beef. I haven't seen any canned beef in a long time. There's some items that have gone away completely, and some items that are still around, but they're a lot more expensive. However, overall, if you have the money, you can shop. The shelves are pretty full. I did a video a while back that I said there is a food shortage, and I went to Costco and I showed that the shelves are all full, and I'm like, there is a food shortage in the United States. However, it is not a food shortage induced by not having any food. The food shortage is because so many people now cannot afford to buy food. That there is a shortage of food for them because they can't afford to buy it due to the things that have been happening.
Well, I would say that here in Australia, our food prices here, well, I could get a bag of rice, a 10-kilo bag which would be your 20 pounds. I could get that roughly. I could get that for $10, right? Now that same bag would be $25. And also, now the other thing with you, Rudy, is you don't make rice. You don't grow rice in Alaska because it's too cold.
No,
and so
we don't. We get most of our rice from California.
So most
but I know why your rice has gone up in price so much, Lynn.
Yeah, I do too.
Because you're selling it off to China.
That's right, and that's that's true. I know, because they need it over there. That's exactly right. And the other thing is too that our only rice producer here that was on a grand scale in all the supermarkets, they've gone to Vietnam in 2019. So we don't even have a rice producer here. So you're right.
That's an even better reason for those of you that are out there listening right now. That's an even better reason for you to start prepping. It's because you don't know when that supply line is going to be cut off. You just don't know.
No, you don't. No, And
rice is a prepper staple. Rice is one of those things that will literally last 35, 40 years if you package it correctly. So it's one of those things that is very nice to have. It's a great filler, and it actually has, a decent amount of protein for what it is. People don't realize that. Yeah, people don't realize that about, I don't know, probably about 1/20th of the world population lives on rice. They have
It's
1
on
or 2 bowls of rice a day. That's it.
Yeah.
So you can survive on rice. Rice and beans, better. But if that's all you can afford to prep it.
Yeah.
Because it will keep you alive.
I agree. Rice and beans, and I've got lots of chili flakes. So I've got kilos of chili flakes. So that's good. And I've got bags of dry salt. So
yeah, it's very important as well. I mean, I know we're all over the place here covering a lot of things, but spices is very important. It's very important to have a variety of spices because there's something that's called food fatigue. Yes. And even though you yourself will tell yourself, it doesn't matter. If I have to eat rice for 6 months straight to stay alive, I'll do it. That's fine. You probably could. But what about your children?
Yeah.
Right? What about your children? If they have to eat rice for 6 months straight, well, would they survive? Wouldn't it be nice if you have different spices to put in that rice?
Yeah.
You know, that way you're eating the same, that way your palate is not experiencing the exact same taste every single time.
That's right. And that's the beauty of canning too, because we can add to our rice. We've got our canned chicken. I've seen you do videos on canned chicken.
I love canned meats. My favorite meats too are canned meats. And when you do it yourself, you can definitely tell the difference between your product and the product that you buy at the store. It's a lot, it has a more pure taste to it.
It does.
You know, like beef tastes like beef when you can it yourself, right? Instead of getting the beef that you get in a can from a store, you know, that you don't really know what's in it. So I love doing that.
Yeah, I will put out.
Let me tell you something funny. I was talking to a friend of mine a while back, and I told him, "Hey, listen, I love to bake, you know, because I bake bread. I love to bake. I love to can. I really love to cook, right?"
Yes.
And I also told him, I said, and you know what? Whenever my wife pushes the wrong button and kind of like ticks me off, I say, you know what I do in order to calm down? I said, I clean. I said, I clean. So once I told my friend all of this, he said, you know what? You would have made somebody a really good wife.
Yeah, you would have made. Shave off the beard, you would have looked good. That's it.
But you know, the thing is that doing all of those things bring me inner peace.
Yes,
you know,
exactly.
I'm not putting myself on a pedestal, but you know, you could probably ask a lot of people that have been in the military in Australia. And anyone that's, you know, a combat veteran, you know, you can ask an Australian, you can ask them, you know, what brings them peace. And it would probably be something really simple. Yes. You know, like I love to knead dough. Yes. It brings me inner peace because I know for a fact that if I'm kneading dough, I'm living good. I am living really good if I have the opportunity to sit there and knead dough or cook something that I want. So it brings me inner peace, and I love doing that kind of stuff. There's no more tough guy for me.
Well, you've served, so that's the thing, and we're always grateful for that, anyone that served for their country. But the other thing is that you were talking about chickens and garden that you were going to start this year, Rudy. So could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, I'm very excited. You know, I love chickens, and I love watching chickens peck around the yard more than I like eating them. So, and that comes to me from my dad. My dad, before he passed away, he had chickens, and when I go to visit him, I would sit there and I would watch those chickens in the yard for hours. It brings me peace. I love doing it. Yeah. So I've been working on my property. When we purchased this property, it was raw, meaning that there's absolutely nothing on it. We had to cut down the trees and everything and build our house and all that stuff on it. So it was 100% raw. And I started building our house about a year before I retired from the Army. So when we finally retired and moved into the house, it wasn't completely finished yet. You know, the inside was completely done except for trim work, right? But the outside, the outside still had a lot of work to do. So ever since I retired, every non-winter month, we've been working on the outside, getting everything ready. And I am really hoping that this year I'll be able to build my chicken coop and I'll be able to put the garden and do all those things that I've always wanted to do. So my dream of having a small homestead hopefully will start to realize itself this year. So we'll see what happens, though. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Well, if you want any hints on chooks, we call them chooks over here, not chickens. So if you want any hints on chooks, I've got a few. My mum would be the best one to give tips though, because ever since I was a little girl, Mum always had chickens, chooks. Oh. But your soil over there, you were telling me too, is so fertile. So you're also an oil. They get oil from your country as well. So do you think that's part of the reason that your soil's so fertile? It's a lot of.
I have no idea. I have no idea, but the soil here is very nice. I mean, there's only so many years you can use your soil before you have to replenish the nutrients. But when I first came here and I started cutting down some trees where we're going to build our house, the soil is just black, nice and black, and it's. Yeah, I'm really excited to start doing that. And you know, the thing is I've never done it before, so I'm going to be learning as I go. So it's going to be a good experience. You know, I'm going to be sharing that on my channel as I go. And the great thing about the Alaska Prepper community, the people that are, you know, following my channel, I call them my community members because they're like my family, right? Yeah. So the great thing about the AP community is that I learn more from the community members than they learn from me.
Yes.
So whenever I have a question, I'll either ask it on a live stream or a video, and I'll get, you know, 100 comments telling me this is what you need to do. So it's going to be a great journey. Yeah, it's going to be a great journey. I'm really excited to do it.
Yeah, that's it. And you have got a great community. And one thing you did as a community last year was in 2020, you raised $13,000 for charities. And that's what you can do with channel and your community. So do you want to talk a little bit about that too, Rudy? Now we've got that'd be nice. We've got another 15 minutes left, if that's all right.
Absolutely. I mean, I love talking about that because it brings me a lot of happiness to talk about that.
Yeah.
So when I started making money on YouTube, right? Yeah. You know, whenever someone sees a YouTube that has like 50 or 60,000 subscribers or more, they're like, "Oh, you're rich." I'm like, no, you don't know how it works, right? But when I started making money on YouTube, I think that my first YouTube paycheck was like $26, and I was so happy. I was so excited. And then they didn't pay me that month, and I'm like, why didn't they pay me my $26? And I found out that you have to have a minimum of $100 for them to pay you. So it took me like it took me like 3 months for them to send me $100. It was like $116, right? But I was so happy. I was like, wow, I'm actually making a little bit of money for doing videos that I really like to do anyways. I'm like, it's a win-win. So I told myself when I started making you know, a little bit of money on YouTube, I told myself that I was always going to use some of that money to give back to the community. Not only the community members, but also to the community where I live. Because if we don't learn to give, then you know, we're gonna miss out. Because I heard a quote once, and I'm gonna paraphrase this quote, but someone once said that giving is the most selfish act that you can do, because the gratification that you get from giving is so much more than what you actually give. And that is true. And that is true. And I've learned that. I've learned that through my community. So I've really grown through my community's words. I've actually grown. So like I said, ever since I started, you know, making a little bit of money, I decided that I was going to give a certain amount to charity, and that I was going to give a certain amount back to my community members in the form of giveaways. And the reason that I do that is because in all reality, without my community members, there wouldn't be an AP channel. You know, I'd be speaking to a brick wall if I didn't have people there listening. So, you know, I feel compelled to give back to the people that have actually allowed me to stay here and allowed me to have a voice on this platform. So what we decided to do was, I remember our first charity was to the food bank. I remember it was only like $200 worth of, like $267 worth of food. And I was so happy. I was so excited. You know,
I remember that.
Great, you know? And And, you know, we've also donated to the homeless shelter. We've donated to the battered women's shelter. However, I've decided to only donate to the food bank because I found out that the homeless shelter and the battered women's shelter, they get their food from the food bank.
Ah.
So that's why I decided to just give to the food bank, because they're benefiting all of them, right? So, so like I said, our first charity to the food bank was like $200, which was like 2 years ago. And this last year, we did a $2,100 charity to the food bank. So we went up almost 10 times in amount, which, you know, it was a lot of work, but I was so happy. Yeah, I was so happy to be able to do that. And I think that putting that message out there to the public, that there's nothing wrong with giving, that giving actually makes your community better, and that it actually benefits you. You know, like giving really benefits me. It brings me a lot of joy. You know, it really does. So I honestly benefit more from giving than what the people I'm giving to benefit, right? Because it really brings me so much joy. So
well, the Bible says, Rudy, it's more blessed to give than receive. And I understand what you're saying. When you're a child, you're waiting for Santa Claus. You don't understand that. But as an adult, you're like, it is more blessed to give than receive. And I think in the times we're in now, where we've seen panic buying and we've seen a lot of people get scared, they can actually lose that generosity. But, you know, through your channel and many other channels, and just some people have got good neighbours that do give them a loaf of bread if they need it, you know, a neighbourly thing. Well, it's still happening, even though we see on the news, which I don't watch the news. So that's it.
So like I said, last year we did a lot of charity, and my goal has always been to try to do a little more as far as charity goes. Try to do a little more each year than I did last year. So if next year, or if this year in 2021, if this year we can do like $13,500 in charity, that'll be, and maybe next year we can do 14,000. You know, but we'll see how that goes. We'll see how that goes, because it's really all dependent on, you know, the financial stability of the people, including myself. You know, if all of a sudden YouTube stopped paying us, you know, tomorrow, I wouldn't be able to do these things. So it's one of the reasons I'm actually grateful for YouTube. I know that a lot of people have a love-hate relationship with YouTube because of the censorship and things like that. But the way I see it is if you have a love-hate relationship with YouTube, just look at it this way. It's okay to have that relationship, but get the good out of it. Don't concentrate on the bad stuff, and concentrate on the good stuff, and you'll be better off, and the people around you will be better off as well. If you only concentrate on the bad things, no one is going to benefit from it. But if you can take the good thing out of it, then a lot of people may benefit from it.
Well, I think the solution to that is what we talked about the other day, is when you're looking for friends, you'll get the benefits. But when you're only looking for information on YouTube or what you can get out of YouTube, you won't get anything out of it. It's all about friendships and networks.
Absolutely. That's why I don't concentrate on subscriber numbers. Like, and like somebody told me the other day when I was doing a video, that they said, "Hey, AP, this is your 999th video. So the next one you put up will be your 1,000." I was like, I didn't even know how many videos I had up until you told me. You know, so I don't really look at that stuff. I care more about the quality of the community member than I care about the number of subscribers that I have. So I care more about that.
And so when you're caring about your community, you're wanting to put out good content, which is what you do. That's why so many watch you. That's why I've watched you for 3 years. And when you've got that good content, it's like you were talking about cycles. It just happens, you know. So talking of content, there was, before we go, we've got another 5 minutes, I think, left. Time flies when you're having fun. I've had immense fun. So you did put up a video about a young gentleman. He was 24 years old, and he couldn't get his $8,000. Would you like to talk a little bit about that for a minute or so?
Absolutely. I highly recommend that whoever listens to this watches that video. It's not that long. And the reason I put it, the reason I did that video is to prove to people. I wanted to prove to people that well, I don't know how it is in Australia, at least here in the U.S. In the U.S., the money that you deposited in the bank, it's not your money. As soon as you deposit that money in an account, whether it has your name or not, that money is no longer yours, and the bank can refuse to give you back your money if they deem so. You know, so thank goodness for that young man. Well, the story behind that was a young man in New Jersey. I think he's 24 years old, right? He had his life savings in a bank account, $80,000, which is quite an achievement for a 24-year-old, by the way.
So too. Right? I
so he found out that a certain branch of banking, that they were offering $700 to anyone that opened an account with them with a certain dollar amount in it. So what he did was he transferred, or attempted to transfer, $50,000 from one account to the bank that was going to give him $700 so that he can benefit from the $700 giveaway. Well, once he did that, both banks closed his account down, shut it down, and they would not talk to him. They would not talk to him. They would not consider meeting with him or anything until he went to the news media. And once the news media started reporting on it, they gave him his money back. But the point is this, and I know a lot of people will say, well, there's laws that say that, you know, for money laundering and stuff, they have to do this and that. It's your money. It is your money. You know, in the United States, we have what's called due process, meaning that you are innocent until proven guilty. So unfortunately, it's kind of changing to where you are guilty until you can prove yourself innocent. And that is exactly what this young man had to do. He had to prove that he was innocent. He was found guilty of something he never did, but had to prove that he was innocent so he can get his money back. You know what? Give me a second. I've got a phone. I'll be right back.
Okay, no worries. Yeah, well, in Australia last year, I think it was in February, we actually had a cash ban that was supposed to come in, legislation, and it never got passed through, only because the people rose up and said, we don't want to just have a minimum of $10,000 we can withdraw from the bank. That's our money out of the bank. So that did get pushed aside.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. I was just explaining to people about the cash ban. We actually had a cash ban trying to be passed in Australia last year. It was for $10,000 was the maximum you could withdraw from a bank at any time. And once that was passed, we were sure it would go down to only $5,000. And so it didn't get passed through. But what you were saying, when you showed that video, I was like, wow, that's exactly what we were facing last year. And it's not just...
Well, ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you this. I know this show is supposed to be about preparedness, but we've been all over the place. But I'm here to tell you something right now. And like I said, I'm a cycles person. All right. So eventually they will get rid of cash. They're gonna do it. And when I say they, I mean the people that are above us, that think they're above us, right? However, not morally, right? But the people that hold the power, right? Eventually they will get rid of cash. However, in my opinion, it won't last very long, because I think that the system that they have in, first of all, in my opinion, they already have a financial system in place to take over the one that we are currently in. They already have it in place. All they need is the next big, huge crisis. We're going to have a huge crisis, probably worldwide. There's going to be a big crisis, and they're going to say, listen, if you want us to stop the pain, if you want to be able to keep your house, if you want to be able to do this and do that, if you want to be able to eat, you have to let us do this. And then the people, the majority of the people are going to say, yes, please, we'll do whatever you want, as long as you stop the pain. And unfortunately, we live in what is a democratic government system. And in my opinion, a democratic system is the worst system of all, the worst system of governance of all. And the reason I say that is this, because in a democratic run system, 50.1% of the people can tell 49.9% of the people how to live their lives. It's also referred to as by mob rules. You know, so So just a little bit over half of the people can actually tell you how to live your life just because it's a democratically run system. In the United States, a lot of people don't even know that we are what is called a constitutional republic, which is a form of government that is put in place to do one thing and one thing alone, and that is to protect your rights. But we've gotten away from that. We have gotten away from that. They've pretty much shredded our Constitution. And but we're still fighting. There's still enough people that I believe the fight will go on for a long time, and eventually good will prevail over bad. I have hope that in my lifetime, we will see true freedom, and hopefully our children will be able to live free lives. I have hope that we'll see that in our lifetime. However, ladies and gentlemen, this is why you need to be prepared, because before there is good, usually it is preluded by bad. Usually bad has to come before there is real good. Just like you hear the saying that there must be war in order for there to be peace. Things, in my opinion, are going to get considerably worse, incrementally worse, and we're going to go through a really tough time before we can come out on the other side with a system that is just and moral for everyone, and not just for the few.
I agree. And you did mention about getting over those bumps. Well, this is why we're prepping, because a bump doesn't last forever. Otherwise, it'd be straight. We go over the bump and hopefully we get a little. At the moment, I think that we had a rough time in 2020 here in Australia where we rode the bump. Now I think the next bump's coming up. So
and the next bump will be bigger. The next they need a
a lot bigger.
In order to get most of the people to submit, they need a crisis that will really crush the middle class. So they're going to get their crisis because they're the ones that are in charge of it. So they're going to get their crisis. What it is, I have no idea. But prepare for everything and you'll be okay.
Well, Rudy, you were
prepping. I want to make sure that people understand. Don't be afraid to prepare. You know, think about your all you have to do is ask yourself this. Close your eyes and ask yourself this if you're listening to this video. Close your eyes and ask yourself, what if my child had not eaten for a week and I did not know where my next meal was coming from? Ask yourself that, and if you ever want to find yourself in that predicament. And if the answer is no, you don't want to find yourself in that predicament, then start putting away a little bit of food and start preparing for anything, not just for one thing, but for anything. And that's where I'll leave it at that. I think I beat that horse to death.
Yeah, that was wonderful, Rudy. Look, thank you so much for coming on our channel, Homestead Oz, and I'm really appreciative of all the information you packed in that 1 hour. That was amazing. And I don't think we're all over the place. I think we're giving a message in due season. I think you did really well, especially the 5 Bs. Everyone, please, out there, go and check out Alaska Prepper's channel. He's got a phenomenal amount of information on there and a great community, and he does give out to the community as well. So on that note, we will say thank you, Rudy, and take care. And
we'll be for having me.
Okay.
We'll talk to you soon.